I don't know if your school has an English classroom. For SHIMA, we do have an English classroom. So I have my own classroom where the kids will come to me. And then if you don't have an English classroom, then you will go to the home class and you will teach in the home class. Sometimes the home teacher will be there, and sometimes the home teacher will not be there. So it really depends. Okay? I've been told that if they really trust you, they will not be there. And if they are feeling kind of iffy about you, sometimes they'll kind of hang around to see what you're doing with their lesson. Alright. In terms of curriculum design, there are different approaches, and every school has, their own philosophy on what you should do. So you can either do topic-based, reader-based, extension of the textbook, or project-based. So what do you think topic-based is?
Topics?
Yeah, like continents or
Right.
oceans.
Right. So basically, if you look through the book, every unit has some kind of grammar topic or whatever,
Okay.
and then you can choose to use and then design your 3 or 4 units worth of lesson based on that. If it's reader based, then you can choose a book that you're interested in reading. Some schools will do this. You can choose a book and then you can design a lesson from the book, like a reader, like some kind of story book. Okay, like the 3 Little Pigs or whatever. Extension of the textbook. Then maybe there's some kind of cultural theme in the book, and then you can decide to speak a little bit more about a particular country in terms of food, music, or whatever you choose. And then lastly, project-based. You can have the students present a project. For example, if you want them to be able to make a sandwich and do like a presentation using the different materials, then you have to figure out all the steps in the units previous to that final project of what you need to teach to get them to be able to do that independently. Okay.
I think it's on the side. Is that something on the side? Yeah.
All right. So I work at Siemens, so I only know Siemens approach. So basically what we do is we develop a curriculum map in advance. So basically you'll get a textbook, and then you look at all the units, and then you figure out exactly what you want to do, whether it's a project, it's a reader, it's a topic, and then you figure out what you want to focus on, and then that'll be the units. Then you divide that up over maybe 3 lessons actually, 3 lessons. And then basically we stick to selected text. So every year they'll choose a textbook when they're in grade 3, and then so this set of textbook will stay with them until the end of the year, until they graduate from school. So if they started with story.com, then grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, that means story.com. And if they chose a different book like Super Wow, then they use this series till the end of grade 6. And in terms of creativity for teachers, then you can choose what topics you would like to teach, and then you can determine how you want to teach it. Whether or not you're a game person, you're a discussion person, you're sort of it's a mix of drill, games, and discussion. And then you can decide what kind of in-class activities you want to do. So it's really great. This was our sort of curriculum map. And then so at that time, grade 5 was using Super Wow, grade 6 was using English 7. And then so basically, it's broken down into weeks, and then you decide what you do. So like for my first week, because the way we decided to do it, I would start my units after my co-teacher has finished teaching Unit 1. So after she's done with teaching Unit 1, then I would start with some kind of topic from Unit 1, because then I can build on the existing language, skills, and structures that she's already taught the kids. And then that makes it a little bit easier. And we also do sentence of the week and question of the week. I think in the international program, the hardest part will be to differentiate teaching, because you'll have really low kids who are not even really familiar with ABCs. So if you say E, maybe they'll write the letter R. So that's a possibility. And then you'll have super advanced kids who can speak to you and carry out conversations conversation with you in English, just like we do normally. And then so you have to keep all the different levels engaged and interested. So I think that'll be the biggest challenge, right? All right. So if you take a look, I decided to do sort of like a story book. So it's one by PartII. I don't know how many of you know that book. Anybody know that book? It's actually a really good book. It uses colors and numbers, and it's about how the colors were moved by red, and then how we stood up to red and by changing into numbers, and it's okay to be. It has like the non-bling theme, how it's okay to be different. So I usually start off with something like that to let the kids know you're not meant to be supportive, don't make fun of each other, that sort of deal. And then our topic, at least for grade 5, I taught grade 5 also, so we did sort of like the rooms in the house, we did furniture, and then embedded in the teaching, we review present continuous tense with the ing, and as you can see, and then you have to write down the schedule, daily routine, seasons, and hobbies, recreation. And then so this is this year's. So it got a lot detailed since this is the second time. And then this year is a little bit more project based because then we'll be doing some sort of teaching on natural disasters, and then I can do a sort of project on safety measures. And then also there's one on we'll do one of like places around town, so they can do sort of mini projects, sort of like places to visit and share to, and then they can make a poster and sort of get a little more information about places. All right, lesson plan. Basically, you'll have weekly lesson plan meetings with co-teachers. That's true for some schools and not so true for other schools. Am I loud enough? Okay. Here you go.
I think you're trying to film at the back. I think that's so good.
Well, anyways, so when I meet with Lisa, we usually meet once every 3 weeks, and then we just kind of go over the general outline of what I'll do, and then and then I can fill in the finer details on my own, and I just send them my lesson plan. So usually, if we meet, we go over maybe 3 lessons worth of material in one sitting. And so in your discussion, you'll talk about how to present the material, how to address the learning goals. So make sure you know what you want to achieve at the end of your lesson. And then also think about how you're managing the classroom. In grade 5 and grade 6, management is really key to success. It can really make it a great class or like really not so pleasant to be in. Instruction. You can teach using PowerPoints, videos. You can bring in dialogues like Regis Theater or create your own dialogues. And we do other things. These are more like specific to Shiva. We do sentence of the week, question of the week, and then I did tongue twisters with the kids just to get the fluency level up. For special holiday and cultural units, there are those in every textbook pretty much. Then you can decide whether or not it will be a school-wide activity, like for Christmas. Some schools will do sort of like rides around school, and then children will pull like other children in boxes or whatever, and they have school-wide activities. You can be a part of that, or you can help to design that or propose ideas like that. Or they'll just ask you to participate in some sort of school-wide event that they've already designed. When you design your lesson plan, try to make sure you have listening, speaking, reading, and writing every time the class meets. So try to vary the activities. Besides just playing games and stuff, try to vary the activities so that you can really make sure the kids are practicing different parts of their English. In terms of outcomes, hopefully they'll be able to really use English in their daily lives. Although I think a lot of them are not so proficient yet, but you just have to be patient. At least get them to enjoy the language and then sort of learn more about other cultures. And at Shima, they hope students can act out dialogues, write sentences, create their own dialogues, understand the materials presented the skills to necessarily talk to you in English, and they will try to talk to you in Chinese. Evaluation. We have quizzes, worksheets, homework assignments, tests, projects, and in-class presentations. So if you want to do an in-class presentation, it's important to teach them how to present and give them chances in class to really, really practice all the language skills before you set them up in front of the classroom to do this. Because a lot of them will do this. Okay? So you really have to pretty much teach many of the skills. When you're teaching, try to be firm, fair, and consistent. Consistency is really important because then they know the routine and then they can kind of run with it. Show that you care. So if they don't do the work and you just don't do anything, you just kind of pretend you didn't see, then they will continue to do that in your class, and that's not good. So try to get everybody on task and involved when you can, and then praise and encourage good behavior. It's a good idea to find a helper in the classroom to help you out. There's someone who can totally communicate with you, and that person can be your translator if you need one. And that person can also help you collect all the homework that you want the kids to turn in or any kind of in-class material. So find yourself an ally that first week or second week and choose someone who's reliable. And that way it will make your task much more manageable. So you're not running down after every kid trying to chase down homework, to grade. All right, important thing, practice preventative classroom management. So think about things you can do in the class before the kids even come in. You can think about the classroom arrangement. How do you want your desks to be arranged if you have your own classroom? If you don't, and you're working in a homeroom teacher classroom, then kind of go around, check out the classroom, see what you can do with their arrangement. Also, think about how different arrangements can change kids' behavior. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. Before you go into any kind of activity, really take your time and model what they should do. If you want them to really look at each other and really speak loudly, then you got to do that a few times. If you have a co-teacher, do it with your co-teacher, but in grade 5 and grade 6, you don't have that luxury. So you need to find your little helper, right? And then practice with your little helper and then get another peer to come up and practice before you say, okay, now everybody go, start, okay? Establish procedures and routines. If there's a certain way that you start your lesson, like you start with sentence review, then try to keep that consistency because they come in and they can, at least without any language skills, rely on that routine and they know what to do. Otherwise, if you are just kind of very sort of free with how you structure your class, sometimes you spend a lot of time just explaining an activity. You get frustrated because they might not understand you, and they get frustrated because it's taking a long time for them to do everything. So try to keep everything short and keep your lesson moving. Classroom arrangement. A lot of times you'll see this kind of arrangement in schools, possibly, and then they do this so that the kids won't have as much opportunity to talk. And then the good part with this is that at least it's good for teacher-centered instruction. And then you can walk up and down the rows to kind of see, which kid is on task and which kid is not. What I'm doing right now is probably not what you should be doing in your classroom. You should try to walk around if you can, and then sort of take a look at what the kids are doing. They'll keep them on their toes and actually listening to you. Right now at my school, we are practicing cooperative teaching. So most of our desks are grouped together in groups of 4, and sometimes groups of 5 if you have a strange number, like 28, and then it's hard to make it into, nice even groups of 4. And then this way, we can get the kids to help each other and teach each other things. So you can have maybe one strong kid in every group whenever possible. Some middle kids, a few weak kids, and then the strong kid can kind of be the leader. But once again, it's really important to model and set that up properly. Otherwise, it's just an opportunity to talk for the kids, and they will talk Chinese too if you don't model carefully. If you have a really small class, which probably will happen here, then you can do some sort of arrangement like this. This arrangement is good for playing games, and if you have a large classroom and you can manage to do that, you can do games, or you can do, if you do a double horseshoe, then you can do peer work activities. Again, it involves kids getting up and then moving around. Every time the kids get up, you are kind of eating into instruction time, and then so depending on how you manage it, it could be really efficient or very inefficient, and that might range a bit of time. In terms of my classroom right now, it looks like this. I have the kids to approve the boards, and then I try to push all the desks up to the board as much as I can, because the kids that sit in the back, they tend to be off task, and then because we always have two doors, and we have this policy where teachers can wander in and out of each other's classrooms and observe and see what each other, what each other's doing in their classrooms. So sometimes, the principal will wander in, sometimes the head teacher will come in, and we come in through the back door, and then it's their kids that are in the back that are sort of off task. So I try to keep everybody sort of, closer to me, that way they can A, focus better, B, I can keep an eye out and help anybody who's in trouble more quickly.
Can I say something about that
Yes.
previous one? I use that always, but then I line up the center line to the center of the board.
Okay.
Still enough space, you can fit it in like this. But then this guy doesn't have to turn around to see the board. So if the center line of each group points directly at the center of the board, then
Thank you. Okay, that's something I can change. Thanks, Kim. And then, so right now it looks like this. In a different classroom, they have the desks facing each other in cluster arrangement like we've seen before, and then they are working on a game or they are practicing. All right, interactive modeling. How many of you know what that is? Sorry, I'm just kind of talking through everything. Anybody know? Actually, it's from Responsive Classroom, and then interactive model. I think it's a little bit difficult depending on the level of the kids, but basically you have to kind of quickly and in the shortest way possible say what you're modeling, and then you model it exactly as you want to see it. Even if it takes time, just do it. Take the time out to really show the kids. And then, if you can, if you have really high kids, ask them what they noticed about what you did, or like the good parts that you want them to notice, and then invite one more student to model in the exact same way. So this is when, because you don't have anybody to help you, like a co-teacher, this is when you have to ask your helper to help you, and then maybe after your helper's done, invite one more set of kids to come and model. And then ask students what they notice, mention the good parts, or maybe some parts that didn't go so well, and then have the whole class do what you want them to do. Okay, so take time to really model and give feedback on what's good and what's bad, especially early on in the semester, because it will set the tone for the rest of the semester. Procedures and routines. Think about what you want to do for entering the classroom and dismissal. If they're late, what do you want to do? Make sure you have some kind of consequence, because if there is no consequence, then they might come late a lot. If you have your own classroom, the kids will be traveling to your classroom by themselves a lot of the times, and they could be 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, so what do you do? And sometimes the home teacher will help you. They'll ask all the kids to line up and then walk to your class at the same time. But sometimes they do that after the bell rings. So by the time they get to your classroom, it's 5 minutes into your lesson. So instead of having 40 minutes to teach you, now I have 35. So you have to sort of communicate with the home teacher, and or you're waiting at the classroom, waiting to bring them to you. So you have to set up some kind of routine and procedure for getting the kids to your classroom on time and ready to learn. Figure out how you want them to work in groups, how you want them to work in pairs. What should they do? A lot of them won't have the language to work in pairs, speaking in English. So if they're working in pairs and you want them to practice, maybe you need to teach them how to say the words and then they're practicing. But then you need to have a way of checking. Like maybe you give them a checklist, they can check each other off and sign each other off. Or some way for you to know that they're actually using the time to practice, not to just chit-chat in Chinese. How do you feel about snacks in your classroom? I actually don't allow snacks in my classroom, but I will allow water because it is really hot. And they're running to your class sometimes right after recess or coming directly from recess without going to the homeroom, so they'll be really thirsty. And that line sort of make them less focused on learning. If they need to go to the nurse's office, if they need to go to the office, restroom, have some way of managing that. Sometimes you'll find out kids check out by going to the bathroom. Teacher, may I go to the restroom? I mean, I've done it myself when I was 16. But because you only have 40 minutes, it is such a short period of time. If they keep going to the bathroom, they're really going to be missing out on their lesson. So actually, one of the co-teachers came up with a rule: if they were to go to the bathroom and they come back, then they would have to stay in the back of the room for 5 minutes before they can sit down. This is to really push them to use the restroom during break time. Passing in papers. If you don't have someone to collect for you, sometimes some kids, they will just not turn in their paper. So usually if I have a helper, I'll ask them to collect everybody's paper and I ask them to put it in numerical order because they have a number system. So every kid has a number. So they can quickly check to see who's missing and then you can kind of figure out A, who's absent, B, who didn't do the work, or who's struggling, who didn't turn it in. And then that way you can kind of get the kids that need help to turn in their papers more efficiently without taking up your personal time. Asking questions. If students need to ask questions, what can they do? I actually do allow kids to sort of whisper if they need to ask questions in class. Like I'll say, okay, if you have any questions now, ask your friend right now. You have 1 minute. And then I stop it and I give it back. And then so we try to answer questions, or they will ask your friends to translate their question into English to ask me, and then I will adjust the class. And then finally, just organizing the material. The kids here, a lot of time they have workbooks, they have exercise books that are bound already. So if you give them a handout, they don't really know how to keep it organized and keep everything neat in their folders. So you might have to go over first page. You need to have your letter to the parents, second page. You can have your stamp sheet, third page. You need to blow up. So check that. Sort of otherwise, at the end of the semester, if you need to give your exam, and it's for Siemens, is it open book there? Oh, okay. So Siemens has an open book exam, so they can open up their folders and use whatever material they might need to navigate through the test. That's not the case here, so they might not have that help. But if they're missing handouts, it's going to be really hard for them to study, and they won't do very well on their exam. So that's something to keep in mind. At the end, we have an oral test and then a written test at the end of every semester. Is that true? And then so basically, I will give the oral test and I will call students up by number. And then each student has maybe 2 minutes tops to answer my questions in English, whether it's reading a sentence, answering a question, or some kind of reading comprehension. And then the rest of the kids will be sitting in their seats writing the written exam. And the exam should cover things that you've done throughout the semester. So you decide and then you make it up with you make up the exam, you can discuss the content with your co-teacher. All right. This is a reminder to myself. When I do my PowerPoints, sometimes I have directions in English. Like for example, I'll have turn to page 48. And then the kids will see that turn to page 48 and then everybody will see the direction and they'll start to sort of use that to help them to get to where they need to be. And I do that for myself too, to remind myself, oh, what am I going to do next? It's sort of like the way I map out my curriculum. So here, this is the behavioral rubric. So, you know what a rubric is. So basically, it's like a grading system. So instead of using a lot of words to describe what you want, they might not understand you. Show them pictures. So if this is a 5, then you can tell them, okay, this is a 5, and it's some kids will be able to tell you why, right? Or you can point to parts of the picture that makes it a 5. And then this is a 4. Why is this a 4? And this is considering this, okay? And this is a 3, right? And then 2 and then 1 if you're completely just sleeping on the desk. And then so after I show this, I will ask kids to quickly look around. All right, so what do you think you're at? Where do you think you're at? Show me fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then just to get them to be aware of what they're doing and what they're not doing. So this is a picture of, we're ready to learn. So what you need to have your paper out with some eyes on. And then so you kind of go over what you expect and then remind them that you have expectations. All right. I don't have a big one, but just to quickly go over something that we do at, and I know you guys looked at lots of so this is just something. So we have to teach sentence of the week, which is look before you leave. And actually, many of these words are really hard for the kids. So in teaching something like this, then you can ask them to look for, like phonics rules, like the double O, and then you can teach the kids how to chop up words into syllables, and then the EA, and then to notice the way the words, you can break up the words into manageable chunks to read. Actually, you'll find that you're teaching kids how to read and how to break up words, like chunking a lot at grade 5. So it's just a lot of reading practice. And then so maybe try to find funny pictures so that they can kind of, even if they don't exactly recall all the words, at least they have some sort of picture for like the pictures that you've shown. And then I know other teachers probably showed you like sentence patterns and then what you do with sentence patterns, right? Yes? Well, I don't know what you've learned, so I'm just kind of jumping in with what you think. You have it. Alright, so I don't think you can see it very well on the handouts either, but anyways, here. This is the handout. And actually it's okay, so in terms of lesson plan, just keep in mind that you need to keep track of time. And then so try to write down how much time you think you'll need to each of the activities. And this is sort of more like a lesson plan for when you are going to be observed by your teacher or your principal. And if it's normal procedure, you should be observed like once every semester, and that's about it. If they think you need more help, they might come and look at you more often. But make sure you communicate with your teacher and what's going on. And then so you try to figure out what skills you'll be teaching, and then sort of list that, and then list some instructions of what you want them to do, and then tell them what you're teaching, and then like the steps of what you'll do during your lesson. So like for example, the first part is skills, reading and listening, and speaking. And then so I'll ask you just to open your student book and find their sentence of the week, get them to so the first team will get a point. So I actually, when I first start class, I divide the class into 2 teams, and then I keep track of points. Like so if you're the first group to open up your folders and you get a point, if you answer questions, you can get a point. And sometimes they have a stamp sheet. So if you answer a question for me individually, you can give yourself a check and you can get an extra stamp. And then the stamps can translate into some kind of reward system. So have some sort of management thing built in for yourself. And different teachers do it differently. Other people play games. They draw basketball hoops, and then depending on how many hoops you have, they draw a line towards like you draw a basketball hoop and then there are different teams, so there are lines with little points, and then you can jump from point to point. The first one to score the basket will get some type of reward. So figure out some way to get the students